Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today we're going to talk about all the books I read in the month of April. The quality of books I read in April is probably the best I've had so far this year. I read 5 books, and yeah, you'll see. I read some amazing books this month. Okay, so the first one that I read is one that I listened to while I was driving to Pennsylvania to have a weekend with my friend Jen. And I wanted a really good audiobook that I could listen to, fully on my trip, on my drive. And that was Evie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes. This is a book that was sent to me for a Christmas book exchange. I'm pretty positive Krista sent me this one. And I have been wanting to read it for a while. I've heard amazing, amazing things about it. And I thought this would be a good one. It's not super long. It was going to be entertaining. It is an adult fiction. There is romance. There's a romance for sure, but it's not like considered a romance. I guess you could say it's a fiction book, and it deals with a little bit of grief as well. There's some of that in here, and yeah. So I loved this. I loved it. It was narrated by Julia Whalen, which always kicks it up a notch for me, no matter what. She's definitely my favorite audiobook narrator. And I loved these characters. So when I say that there's grief in here, there's grief both of losing a loved one, someone who has passed on. And there's also a grief aspect of somebody who is no longer doing the job that they love because they physically can't. And so there's a little bit of grieving in here as well with that. So we are following a woman who has lost her husband, and that's complicated. And she ends up moving back to her hometown, and she's living near her best friend, and kind of just being a widow now and living on her own. And then in comes a baseball player who is no longer playing. And he just needs to get away because he's really in the spotlight, and he just needs to get away from everything. He's not doing okay, basically, because of what has happened with his career. And he ends up staying in a guest house of hers because they have like the same mutual friend. And so their mutual friend kind of set them up as far as this whole situation goes, provided a place for him to stay. And you see them get to know each other and what's going on and all that. I just ate this up. I loved it so much. I was laughing. I was yelling a little bit while I was driving. But these are adults who are in adult relationships, and that's what I appreciated. So it's not a whole lot of miscommunication, or they're just not talking. There's a little bit of that because that does create conflict, but it's not too much. And you really see them deal with their stuff in a healthy way. And it's refreshing to see that. I will definitely read more from Linda Holmes. I do have her book Flying Solo already, and then she does have another book coming out, I believe, next year. So that'll be exciting too. But yeah, I loved it. 5 stars. And the next one that I listened to, I actually finished Evie Drake Starts Over on my drive to Pennsylvania, and then on my drive home, I started this book, and then I finished it over the next week. But that is Radium Girls by Kate Moore. This is a nonfiction book. It was on my list to read this year because I want to read more nonfiction, and I would like to read 10 this year. So I was like, okay, I need to go ahead and put another one on my TBR here soon. And I actually picked this for my spring TBR as well for one of my Christmas book exchange books because Lindsay sent me this one quite a while ago. It was one of our first ones that we did. She sent this to me. So 2 Christmas book exchange books, which is awesome. So this is a nonfiction book that follows women who worked in a factory that made the watch faces for the military in World War I. And what they used to make these watch faces so that they could, be seen in military situations was radium, because radium has that glow and, it can light up and everything. Now, this is before we knew what radium does to you. And these women were making these faces of the watches and seeing how they were painted, because you had to paint the radium on by hand. But the process of how they did that made it so that they were literally covered in radium by the end of the day. And the things that the radium did to these women's bodies, it was rough. It was rough to hear that and to imagine it and to know that this really happened. This is nonfiction. This is not a fictionalized, account. This is what happened. Oh man, guys, it was awful. And then even worse is the way that the company treated these women. Took absolutely zero responsibility for it. Like it was laughable. But these women were not backing down, and they took these guys to court and it was a whole thing. Oh my gosh, you guys, it was so good. It was told so well. It felt like it was a narrative nonfiction. It felt like I was being told a story. And I really felt for these characters and, these women who are real people, like not even characters, but I really felt for them. And just what they went through was seriously horrific. But I loved hearing about it and following it and finding out what happened. And these women were amazing. So another 5-star book. I could not stop listening to it. I think I read this in 4 days, and this is a chunky nonfiction book. This would normally take me a little bit longer to get through, but I could not put it down. And when I did put it down, I wanted to pick it right back up. This is narrated by Angela Brazil, and she did a pretty good job. She felt a little bit choppy in certain areas, but for the most part, it was a good audiobook narration. So, yeah, but if you have not read this, I highly recommend it. This also does have an adaptation that I would like to check out, but fantastic. And I'm definitely going to read more from Kate Moore. All right, these next two are books from my 5-star predictions for our last round. So I won't talk too much about it because I already have. So I'll leave my wrap up down below if you guys want more details on my thoughts of these. But the first one is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. I absolutely loved it. Tabby, tabby, tab, tab. This is book number 3 in her Friend Zone companion series. So I finished a series, which is awesome. And once again, just another 5-star book from Abby Jimenez. She never makes me not do that. She's so good. I loved the story. This deals heavily with ALS. That is a big factor in this book. So if that's something you're sensitive to, keep that in mind. And I loved the characters and I loved their story. And just, again, adults having adult relationships. And 5 stars. Okay, and now let's talk about House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. I finished this, and this one was a 4-star book for me. It wasn't 5. I had a couple little issues with it that did cause me to knock off a star for it, but I don't give Sarah J. Maas 5 stars all the time either. So there's that. There's a few of her books that I've given 4 and even 3. This one was a 4. I really liked it a lot. It was very entertaining, but it was also pretty info dumpy for me. And while the information was important, the way that it was presented to me, I didn't love. So I was kind of just wanting to get through those scenes to move on to something different. And it was in there quite a bit. And then there did seem to be some scenes that felt like we've already been here. We've already been in this situation and we're here again. So it felt like that a little bit as well. But let me tell you, there were some scenes in here that dealt with torture that were still gives me like the so that's a thing for sure. But yeah, so I liked it a lot. This is book number 3 in her Crescent City series, so I'm definitely excited to see where it's going to go next. But I did finish this behemoth and my most anticipated book of the year as well. So that is done. Yeah, so 4 stars for this one. Okay, and then Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. More tabby, tabby, tab, tabs. Okay. I picked this up because it's been sitting on my TBR cart like I've started really pulling things that I've been thinking about a lot and thinking, oh, I really want to read that. I really want to read that. Sometimes there will be books that kind of just stand out in my head, or I start seeing them everywhere, or people start talking about them. And I'm like, okay, you're the third person that's talked about this book. What, I need to pick it up now. That happened with this one. So I pulled it and put it on the top of my TBR cart. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to listen to it. It's narrated by January Lavoie, who is fantastic. And this book, I went into it not knowing a whole lot, and I want to keep it that way for you. I think that's the best way to go into this one. I had no idea what the storyline was. I had no idea what to expect. I have read Jennifer Hillier before, so I knew that it was probably going to be dark, maybe a little gruesome in certain points. And I also know she's not afraid to hurt her characters. And that rings true in this book. I will give you some warnings, because there's some pretty big ones in here. Rape and domestic abuse or abusive relationship. Those are big in here. Heavily described scenes that you see it happening. So keep that in mind. I loved it. I loved it. I just love Jennifer's writing. I love that she's not afraid to go into dark places and to talk about dark things. And I love that her characters are gray. She has gray characters. They're not all great. They all have flaws, and they're flaws. Yeah. So this was 5 stars for me. I absolutely loved it. Just another hit from her for me. And yeah, I just don't want to say too much. You can read the synopsis if you want to. I didn't even read the synopsis, so I literally had no idea going into this book what it was. And I'm so happy I did. 5 stars. Okay, last, and I will say least, because I did have one DNF this month. And I started it on my Kindle. It was a book I had gotten from NetGalley, and I was, I'm trying to work on that still. And I got about 35% into it, and I just was not feeling it. And I was not caring about the characters, not caring about what was happening. I just wasn't really in it. That's Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I wanted to try Penelope Douglas because she is an author that sells really well in our store for the most part. But she is kind of a little bit on the darker side of romance in some of her books. This one is not. This one is an age gap romance. This is one where a girl is living with her boyfriend, and then they move into his dad's house because they need temporary housing, and her and his dad start something. And I don't know. I didn't care. I really didn't. And that's okay. And I recognized it and said, you know what? I'm good. I don't think I need to read this, and I'm good to go. So I put that down and DNF'd it. And that's what it is. No worries. All right. So those are the books that I read in the month of April. Like I said, it was phenomenal with 4 5-star books. 4 of my reads were 5 stars. That's crazy. I was just really, really enjoying everything. So needless to say, I'm not getting rid of any of these. These are all staying on my forever shelves because I loved every single one of them. And yeah, so let me know down below what your thoughts are. Let me know what you read in April. What was your favorite? Did you have 5-star books? Let me know. And I will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.